Hey guys, it's Justine here from I Should Read That, and today I'm going to bring you two book reviews in order to wrap up my Spring Cleaning Readathon. So the Spring Cleaning Readathon was held over Easter weekend, and it was the very first readathon that I ever hosted. It was also the second readathon that I've ever participated in, so I was obviously very excited. So the idea behind the Spring Cleaning Readathon was to take some of the books that have been sitting in your TBR for a while and to clear them out, to get through them, to finish them up, and get them out of your TBR pile. So I ended up reading The State of Sorrow by Melinda Salisbury and The Hate You Give by Angie Thomas. So I thought that in order to wrap up this readathon, I would just talk about my thoughts on these books really quickly and review them for you. So I'm going to do The State of Sorrow first because that was the first book that I read for this readathon. So State of Sorrow is about a young woman named Sorrow who sort of rules over the land of Rannon by proxy because her father, who is the ruler of this land, is completely and utterly helpless. So a few days before Sorrow was born, her older brother, who is the heir to this sort of position, it's not the throne, it's an elected position, but they're the only name on the ballot, so it's essentially the heir to this throne, died in this horrible accident that was actually caused by his father. So because of this accident, Sorrow's father has been in a state of perpetual mourning ever since and has forced the land of Rannon to mourn along with him. So everything from smiling and celebrating to sort of rich foods and desserts, opening up your windows and allowing in a summer breeze are banned in the land of Rannon. So everything comes to a head when a young man who is claiming to be Sorrow's long-lost dead brother comes into the picture. And Sorrow is not sure if he is an imposter, if he's the real deal, but she now has to run for this position against him in something that she should have inherited on her own, but now has to actually compete for. So this book was really quite slow to start, and I've been saying that everywhere because I want to warn people that it is very slow to start. When I first picked this book up, I think I read about 150 pages at the beginning of March, and then I set it aside. And I didn't pick it up for several more weeks until this edition showed up on my doorstep. This is the Fairy Loot exclusive edition. So because it's such a beautiful book and it's such a beautiful hardback, I decided to pick it up, and really around page 160, so right around where I had stopped, was when this book picks up. So if you find this slow to start, I really think that it's worth sticking with. This world really feels like Sleeping Beauty in a way, that everything is sort of arrested in one moment in time, where everyone in Sleeping Beauty's world has fallen asleep because the princess has herself fallen into this eternal slumber. The land of Rannon has sort of frozen in time at the point where Mael had died. It's an incredibly beautiful world, but it's also not that very familiar, sort of medieval-esque fantasy world that we are so familiar with, especially in YA fantasy. There are things like steam trains, for example. A lot of the fashion, although very outdated, does feel much more sort of almost Victorian in a way. I really appreciated what she did with that world building. I feel like it's really difficult to take something that's so established, like the classic medieval fantasy setting, and update it and make it really, really fascinating and feel really unique. The main thing that I want to talk about here is Sorrow herself. There are tons and tons of wonderful side characters. I actually really loved almost every side character in this book. I thought that everyone was incredibly well crafted and had these great either personalities and sort of character development, or they had these great character arcs, depending on who was more of a main character. But we really focus on Sorrow, obviously. Sorrow is a character that I really love. To me, and now I've only read two of Melinda Salisbury's books, but I feel like she is the kind of classic Melinda Salisbury heroine. She is not going in kicking ass and taking names. She does not fight with swords. She's not an assassin. She's not that kind of ass-kicking fantasy YA heroine that we see so often. She's different. She's much more of a kind of quiet type of brave. She's an incredibly intelligent character. She's very driven, she's very stubborn, and she's someone who I feel is very realistic. She's someone who I think I could really look up to. Sorrow is the kind of person who will, as we see in this book, set her own personal feelings aside in order to do the right thing, even if it's not something she wants to do at all. And I feel like all of the decisions that she made in this book, I really got where she was coming from, even if I didn't agree with them. I think that Sorrow herself is an incredibly well-developed character, and she's definitely one of the best heroines that I've read in YA in a long time. There is so much sort of political intrigue in this book. Something that I really love that I've never seen from another fantasy novel off the top of my head is political campaigning. There's so much sort of underhanded trying to get in front of the other person and having to actually run against someone and debate against them and really be seen together in the public eye. I felt like that was incredibly clever, and I really loved that. Overall, I ended up giving this book, I believe, 4.25 out of 5 stars. It was more than a 4-star book for me, but it didn't quite have that 5-star quality in how slow it was at the beginning. If it really picked up from the very, very start, this easily would have been 5 out of 5 stars for me. So the second book that I read during this readathon was The Hate You Give by Angie Thomas. Now, this book doesn't really need an introduction. I feel like everyone knows this book. I feel like everyone has read this book or they want to read this book. And there is so much that has been said about this. I'm not going to say anything new or exciting or different here. I'm also going to address the elephant in the room here really quickly. I am obviously a white woman. There's a lot of experiences in this book that I have never had to face just because of the color of my skin. I've never had someone make a harmful judgment about me based on the way that I look. I have never had any trouble with the police, nothing like that. So I feel like this book, in a lot of ways, was a big learning experience for me because I got to see the world through another person's eyes and see the absolute injustice that she has to face. So because of that, there's a lot of things in this book that I don't really feel qualified to talk about. There are going to be a lot of Black reviewers who will be much better at talking about this book than myself. So if you don't know what The Hate You Give is about, it is about a young woman named Star who is sort of living this dual life. She is from this sort of very poor Black area called Garden Heights, but she goes to school in this very sort of posh white high school. Everything comes to a head for Star when she is on her way home from a party with her friend Khalil, and they are pulled over by the police. The police officer who pulls them over ends up shooting Khalil, who is an unarmed Black man, and kills him. So Star is the only witness to this murder, and she has this sort of great conflict over whether or not she wants people to know that she was there. So what I really want to talk about here are the characters, because I feel like something that Angie Thomas does incredibly well is create this whole, not only community and 2 separate communities, but also these really fascinating and complex characters within that community. I feel like this book is all about duology. It's so many characters sort of have these dual lives and dual paths that they follow. So of course we have Star, who is our main character, and she really gauges the way that she acts and the way that she speaks depending on who she's around. She doesn't want to sound like she's too white around her Black friends and Black community and family, but she also doesn't want to sound too Black around her white friends. And her struggle to sort of balance this is really fascinating, and it's really compelling throughout the book. So another character that I wanted to talk about, who I'm not sure kind of gets as much attention as Star and her immediate family, is her Uncle Carlos. So he grew up in Garden Heights, where Star lives, but he is now a police officer. So he has this incredible sort of conflict that he has to go through because he is a police officer. He wants to serve and he wants to protect. And he works with 115, who's the police officer who killed Khalil, and he has this incredible conflict between who he is kind of at the heart of himself and who he has become in terms of his job and the people who he is with on a daily basis in his professional life. He really stood out to me as an absolutely fascinating character. I really enjoyed seeing that kind of conflict that he has to go through ever since this event happens. Reading this book, I can very much see why it has become such an incredible sensation. You can already tell that this book has changed the landscape of publishing ever since it was published in 2016. It's been less than 2 years. I really love Angie Thomas's writing and her writing style. I think that it shows just how good she is, and that she took a subject like this and turned it into a book that actually has some quite funny parts. It was incredibly enjoyable to read, as infuriating and frustrating as it was. I love the relationship that Star has with her family. I love her mother in particular is an incredible character who I really liked. If you don't feel something while reading this book, you're not doing it right, quite frankly. There's so much here. It's so emotional, whether that's happiness or, comfort with your family, to absolute horrors and injustice that this community has to face. It is incredibly It is a roller coaster of emotion. I thought it was absolutely fantastic. She has earned every single ounce of praise that she has received for this book so far. So obviously I gave this 5 out of 5 stars. Contemporary YA is not a genre that I particularly enjoy. However, I thought this book was absolutely fantastic. If you are not a YA reader, if you are a YA reader but you don't like contemporary, I still highly recommend this book. This is a book that everyone should read. So that is it for my Spring Cleaning Readathon wrap-up. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you enjoyed doing this readathon along with me. Thank you so much to everyone who participated and who interacted with me over the entire weekend. So if you participated, then definitely let me know in the comments below what you ended up reading, or if you have read any of these books, if you have any books that you're looking forward to that you've heard a lot of hype about, then definitely let me know. I would love to hear what you think. So if you enjoyed this video, then definitely hit subscribe because I post videos fairly frequently on this channel, and I will see you next time.